You look at the final score of the Bills-Lions game, and you would think that basically this was a close game throughout. That is not true. I am not going to sugarcoat this because I know there's a tendency for many Lions fans, and I love you people. I love you very dearly. There are many Lions fans who have a tendency to look at this game and say, actually, this was not a blowout. This was not a blowout in any way. The Lions were in this game. When you don't have the lead the entire game, that's not a close game. Okay? That's the illusion of a close game. When you don't have the football in the second half with a chance to tie it up or take the lead, that's not a close game. That's a blowout where you need basically everything to go your way, and, well, what do you know? It doesn't. Now, there's a lot to talk about the game as far as the actual performance, because if you want to just look up and down a stat sheet, yeah, Jared Goff threw for nearly 500 yards and had 5 touchdowns and threw the ball almost 60 times. I'm sorry, but those numbers mean very little to me when basically you're down double digits the entire game. Yeah, of course, Jared Goff is going to be primarily passing the ball. That doesn't really shock me in any way. The thing, however, the story of this game that is more than just the game is the injuries. Aleem McNeil, Carlton Davis, David Montgomery. All three of those guys done for the season. In Aleem McNeil's case, probably not going to come back in the postseason. Montgomery's case, also almost certainly not coming back in the postseason. Carlton Davis is pretty much the only guy that maybe, if you make a deep playoff run, Carlton Davis could come back and be there for you. Now, luckily, it's not a performance related. Like, it's not like his leg or his arm or his chest. It's a fractured jaw. I don't even know how that happened. I genuinely, could somebody point out the play in which that happened to him? Because I've never heard of an NFL player getting a fractured jaw. They wear helmets. What's the point of the helmet? Anyway, those three guys, while are all three of them all pro level talents? No. But you keep adding these on. You already don't have Alex Anzalone. I don't need to tell you about Aiden Hutchinson. You already don't have oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the guy's name. John Kaminsky. You already don't have so many guys on your defense. Derek Barnes, that's another one. At a certain point, you're basically going to tell your offense, never punt the ball, and hopefully we get like 1 or 2 stops throughout the entire game. Maybe we'll get a turnover. Now, I also don't want to say this is entirely doom and gloom, because it's not as though you're not getting anybody in to take the place of Emmanuel Mosley, Carlton Davis, Aleem McNeil, David Montgomery. We don't know whether or not Derek Barnes is ever going to come back. It seems like probably not. But Emmanuel Mosley probably going to be coming back and potentially could be involved in this defense here down the stretch. You know, Ifato Melanfano is a name who made a massive impact on the defense last year and has not played all of this year. We'll see if he can end up making the field here in the final 3 weeks of the regular season into the postseason. So maybe you bring in those guys, and, you know, obviously they had to go out and pick up somebody. On the offensive side, as sort of blasphemous as this might sound, the loss of Montgomery, while very important, I don't think is going to be a massive problem for the offense. Because, for one, Jahmyr Gibbs is very, very good. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level right now. He's already got over 1,000 yards on the ground. And David Montgomery, for as good as he has been the last couple of weeks, been a little lackluster. Basically since oh my gosh, let me think. What was the last game where he really went off? I guess it had to be before the Colts game. What was the game before the Colts game? I don't even remember. I really don't. Maybe it was the Cowboys game. Obviously, he went off. Either way, and this is not me not trying to short sell Montgomery. Montgomery has been fantastic. He's been great in those, have to have it downs where you're running the football. He's been fantastic. But I'm also not going to just say, okay, well, McNeil's down, Montgomery's down, Carlton Davis is down, your season's over. Maybe it is. I don't know. Like maybe this is the camel that breaks or the straw that breaks. I always mess up that phrase. The straw that breaks the camel's back, and we kind of stumble into the playoffs here. And I mean, we've already clinched, but we stumble in, struggling throughout the month in December, and are an early exit. Now, I don't believe that is actually going to happen, just because this team is so well coached. It's got an elite offense, certainly one of the best offenses in the league, and in a way, in a sense, I knew that the team was going to lose at some point. And not like, I think like eventually like they're going to lose into the postseason. I think if they make the postseason, or let me stop. If they were to make the playoffs, I would think that they would win the Super Bowl at that point. Now, obviously they already have clinched the playoffs. My point was more like there was no way they were going to go 15-1, basic or 16-1. That is absolutely absurd in this league to do that. The fact that the loss had to come to a team that you very well could see if you do make the Super Bowl in the Buffalo Bills does not make me feel great. Now, at the same time, I'd rather you lose this game now than lose in the Super Bowl. If you're going to lose to the Bills, lose to them in the regular season when the Bills historically have done very, very well. Compared to their performances in the Super Bowl. Now, as far as the offense, like I said, look, you can point out Amon-Ra had a great game, almost 200 yards and a touchdown, 14 catches. Sam Laporta had 100 yards, probably his best game of the year from a yard standpoint. Even Jahmyr Gibbs had 83 yards on 5 catches as well as a touchdown. Jameson Williams had a quiet role, but even he scored a touchdown for 37 yards. Again, these numbers don't really mean much to me because you were down the entire game. Like you were never in a position in this in the second half to where you could take the lead or tie it up. Like that's just your defense is completely incapable, or was, I should say, maybe not was completely incapable of making a stop. Okay? That's just sometimes you just have one of those games. And look, the Bills had it a little bit last week, and they had it a little bit this week too. The Lions really didn't punt that much in this game. They punted in the first few possessions, and maybe you think, okay, maybe if Detroit had got it going offensively early, if they would have scored in their opening drive, maybe that would have changed the way this game played out. Look, it's a game-to-game league, all right? Week-to-week league. The Bills were down last week. Now they're up this week. The Lions had been up for a pretty long time there. Now they're down this week. All right. That's the NFL. All right. There's been one team in my life that proved that wrong. And even then, at the end of it was, maybe did ultimately prove it right. And that was the 2008 Patriots who were undefeated going into the Super Bowl. And that was, they were due in a sense. Now, with that being said, I do have to make this point because there was something in this game that to me just is completely inexplicable. And I have to talk about it because I think it would be doing a disservice to not talk about it. Dan Campbell, with 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, opted to announce and go for the onside kick. This onside kick was then returned all the way to like the 5-yard line by the Bills, and then they scored a touchdown the following play. The Lions, on that onside kick, were down just 10 points with 12 minutes to go, and the Bills, to that point, had not, had shown vulnerability, right? The momentum had been swinging a little bit in Detroit's favor. To me, this onside kick, for one, the odds of getting an onside kick in the old rules was fairly unlikely. Now with these new rules where you are announcing it to the other team, where, there is no secrecy. There's no jumping on, right? Like ordinarily, right? 12 minutes to go. You're not telling them they're going to think, okay, they're definitely going to just kick this one off. You might even catch guys looking the other way, right? Like that could work in this era where with the new kickoff rules, there's no way that you go for that. And look, to Coach Campbell's credit, he had admitted that was, his bad. But the problem is, you can't get emotional in these spots and say, "Oh my gosh, our defense can't stop a nosebleed. We gotta be, we gotta be risky. We gotta take the chance." And I get it. You want to steal a possession. You want to make it a one possession game. But then what? Like, let's say you got the onside kick and then you scored. Are you gonna kick another onside kick? Like, are you like? To me, if you're ever going to do the onside kick, it has to be your final chance to steal a possession. It has to be last drive of the game, last kickoff of the game. You don't want the other team getting the football back on offense, so you might as well give it a shot, right? You can't do it where basically you know for a fact that you will have to give them the ball back again at some point, almost certainly. And whether that's a failed onside kick again or a regular kickoff where they're just gonna, get the ball, like it just makes absolutely no sense to me. All right, it just made absolutely no sense. It made no sense to me in the moment. It makes no sense to me when I think it back. And I'm glad that he said that he shouldn't have done it. And I just hope that he doesn't do it again. Like, if you're down just 10 points with 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, you kick that ball through the uprights. All right. You let your defense go out there and you're going to win or die by the defense. Because one way or the other, they're probably going to get the ball back. And I might as well pin them back as far deep as possible. So I don't want to see any of that. All right. Now, I do also want to point out again, while this team is more than capable of winning the Super Bowl, the injuries are not nothing. So I want to go at the two sides of the fandom who are equally being foolish. All right. Start with the people saying basically the injuries are nothing, next man up, grit, kneecaps, things. Okay. Grit and kneecaps does not start at defensive tackle. Aleem McNeil does, and he's not playing anymore. Now, is that to say that everything is doom and gloom? No. But it is to say that this is going to be tough. You're going to have to win games in shootouts that you otherwise might have been able to knock the doors off of. Like this Bears game next week. Look, the Bears are terrible, and they got no head coach, and they're basically just spiraling at this point. But it's going to be at their home. It's going to be freezing cold because it's late December in Chicago. Jared Goff has not performed well here before, as recently as last year. And the Bears certainly want to get that game back that they lost on Thanksgiving. It's not going to be as easy where you're just going to be like the very well, Caleb Williams could run all over you because you don't have the guys up front and you don't have the linebackers and you don't even really have a lot of the secondary in Carlton Davis and who knows, and not Vildor. What's his name? Khalil Dorsey, who also went down, who was filling in for Carlton Davis. So you're basically going to be running a secondary of, I don't know, Emmanuel Mosley, Jawan or Quan Alexander, and me. Surprise. This is my reveal. I'm going to be one of the starting corners for the Detroit Lions this upcoming week. Look out for me on that day. But no, like, you basically, you're going to be put in a really tough spot in all three of these final games. Now, you win all three of these games, you get the number one seed. That's a guarantee. You have total control of this, all right? Obviously, if Philly and Minnesota lose with the games that they have coming up, then, you might not have to win all three. But you want to guarantee, go win 3 games in a row, and then go into the divisional round and win 3 more games in a row, and you win the Super Bowl. Obviously, much harder said than done, or much harder done than said. But I think it's still possible. It's still on the table, technically. It's just going to be a lot easier. Now, that's where I get to the other people who, say there's basically no chance. You have to, this defense is going to be totally ravaged. Brock Purdy, Caleb Williams, and Sam Darnold, they're all just going to make, this defense look terrible. And the Lions are going to lose out, and then they're going to be first-round exits because their defense is just so bad. I have no evidence to suggest that this team is just going to utterly collapse, all right? Let me point something out to these people. The last time the Lions lost more than 2 games in a row was 2022 when they lost to, oh, that's right. It wasn't just 2 games. It was 5 games in a row when they started 1-6. So this team has flipped a switch basically since then to being one of the toughest outs among teams among teams in the league. Like you are when the Lions are at a low point, that is when they rise above. And I think of even last season when the Lions had played, I want to say they had lost on Thanksgiving. The following week, they played a tough game where they just barely held on to beat the Saints on the road. Then they lost on the road to the Bears, and they had a big primetime national television matchup against the Denver Broncos at home, a team that was on the upswing, and the Lions felt like they were on a downswing, and things were not going right. And what did they do? They went out and they played one of the best games they have played up to that point in the year and knocked the Denver Broncos completely out of the stratosphere, pretty much ended their season at that point and ended Russell Wilson's career as a Denver Bronco. I'm not suggesting that that's what's going to happen on Sunday because divisional game on the road, you can never predict those. Those are always going to be tough games. However, if the team goes out there and they perform well and they win the game in convincing fashion, I'm not saying people are going to completely flip the switch and be like, oh, the Lions are back to Super Bowl contenders, because I don't think that'd be honest. I mean, it's the Bears after all. They're not very good this year, even if you do beat them in a blowout. But I do think it will quiet a little bit a lot of the negative attention that this team is getting. Now, I want to end this segment because I've been talking here a long while here. I want to end this segment with a little bit of perspective because I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about it was a much more deep conversation. It was not particularly about sports, but I used a sports analogy, which is when you're having a bad time in life, that is your entire life, right? Like if you, I don't know, I'm gonna use some basic examples. These are not personal to me. Let's say your grandpa died or your grandma died. I don't know. Somebody in your family died. All of a sudden, everything in your life sucks. Your job is worse. Food doesn't taste as good. You're fat or whatever. I don't know. Everything sucks when things are going bad. When a big thing happens that's bad, everything sucks, right? And the same applies in sports, okay? When you're winning, everything is great. Your team's amazing. They're never going to lose a game again, right? It's perfect. This is the greatest team of all time, right? But then when you lose, you start to point, oh my gosh, our defense sucks. The coach, I don't know what he's thinking. What is this? Everything becomes, hypercritical. And the reality is somewhere in between both of these extremes, right? The Lions were never going to go 16-1. All right. As much as I would have wished, and this is the guy coming from the guy who every week will pick the Lions in the pick 'em. Okay. But they were never going to go 16-1. They were never going to go 17-0. There's never going to be a reality, really. And I'm gonna stick to this as much as history might look back on it. There's never going to be an NFL team that straight up just goes undefeated at this point. It's way too hard. All right. It's just not going to happen. Now, all of this is to say, I remember at the very beginning of this season when the Lions lost that game to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home, a playoff rematch, and Jared Goff looked awful. The offense looked out of sync. The defense, while really seemed like it was taking that next step, was not getting complimented by good offense. And at that moment, the Lions were then a 500 team going on the road against the Arizona Cardinals with a mobile quarterback and all that. Like, it felt like if the Lions were to lose the next game, everything was over, right? Like everything was going to fall apart. And after the Lions lost that game, they won 11 games in a row. Franchise record, 12-1, clinched the playoffs. Now we're at another impasse. They lose a game in brutal fashion. They get a bunch of players injured, right? Like their defense is ravaged, and we are still in this mindset of, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. We have no idea how the season's going to end, and it could end in heartbreaking fashion. We could lose in the first round of the playoffs. We could lose the last 3 games and lose on the road in the playoffs. We don't even get a home game in the playoffs. Alternatively, we could go on to never lose another game, win the Super Bowl, and nobody remembers, oh yeah, that one time when the Bills beat us 49-42 or 48-42, excuse me. You know, like, that's just sports, okay? Like, you know what's funny? You know what people really the only people that will remember this are nerds like us. Last year, on Christmas Day, no less, the Chiefs lost to the Raiders, who had an interim head coach and a garbage quarterback. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to remember that game. They're going to remember Patrick Mahomes. They're going to remember that Super Bowl. They're going to remember all the amazing, blowout, performances that Patrick Mahomes. Like, nobody's going to remember that one time when they lost a game in the regular season and everybody's watching. Because at the end of it, you know what people are going to remember about that season? Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl in overtime. Game winner to I don't even remember the guy's name. The receiver. See, that's my point. That's exactly my. Ultimately, the only thing that people are going to remember about the season is what it looks like at the end. It's why, even as fun as last year was, I do look back on that season. I'm like, well, while it was fun, won the division, it's a good season to look back on. I feel like, it ended in a bad way, right? Same thing with the Tigers this past year, or any name, pick your team, right? I say all of this to kind of bring people into a little bit of perspective, all right? Nobody knows how the season's going to end. These injuries could be the straw that broke the camel's back, or they could be basically completely incidental and we won't even remember them by the end of the year. And if we do, it'll be only a mark in favor of the team. So I got nothing else to say on this. Look, we're on to Chicago. Whether we like it or not, that's our next game, and that's all the focus I have to put onto at this point. So you go out and you beat Chicago, we'll be right back where we started, where we're, a really good team that could certainly win the Super Bowl if we play our best ball. So there it is. Hi, it's me again. If you enjoyed what you just saw, hit the like and subscribe button. We do live shows every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Hope to see you there.